Game 3 between the Indiana Fever and the Atlanta Dream wasn't just another playoff contest, it was a gut check, a survival test, a moment that would decide whether nearly a decade of waiting was going to continue or finally snap in half. Everything about this night screamed desperation. The Fever had 6 players sidelined, including Caitlin Clark, Sophie Cunningham, and Sydney Colson. They were battered, short-handed, and dismissed by nearly every prediction model out there. Yet when the lights went up and the ball tipped, Indiana didn't just show up. They dug in and delivered one of the most resilient wins in franchise history. Lexie Hull's steal in the closing seconds will live forever in Fever lore, the play that punctuated an unforgettable night. But before that moment of glory, Indiana had to battle through a storm that seemed stacked against them from the start. The Dream were healthy, at home, and smelling blood. The Fever were fractured, held together by grit, chemistry, and the belief that heart could carry them further than raw numbers. For 10 years, this franchise had been waiting to feel what it's like to win a playoff series again, and the ghosts of those wasted seasons loomed in the background. Tamika Catchings was the last to lead them this far, and her shadow still hung over the program. Game 3 was about proving they didn't need to live in her legacy anymore. They could build their own. The game itself was a knife fight from the opening tip. Possession after possession turned into collisions, deflections, and contested jumpers. Every call felt heavier, every mistake magnified, and the Fever, so often victims of questionable whistles this postseason, were forced once again to play through frustration. Lexie Hull got hit with an early foul despite playing textbook defense on Ryan Howard, and the bench erupted in disbelief. It was déjà vu from Game 1, when phantom calls had derailed their rhythm. But instead of unraveling, Indiana used it as fuel. They remembered the bitterness of that night and swore not to let it repeat. Kelsey Mitchell was the heartbeat. She dropped 24 points with 19 coming in the first half, setting the tone by attacking relentlessly. Atlanta threw everything at her, double teams, traps, even face guarding her off the ball, but Mitchell refused to vanish. Every time the Dream built a lead, Mitchell slashed it down, hitting floaters, pull-ups, and tough finishes around the rim. Her energy kept Indiana from being swallowed whole by the hostile crowd. By the second half, the Dream shifted even more bodies toward her, forcing others to step up. That's where Aaliyah Boston came in, anchoring the paint like a veteran far beyond her years. Matched up against the larger Bree Jones, Boston absorbed elbows, shoves, and constant pressure. Yet her timing and positioning flipped the matchup. She finished with 14 points, 12 rebounds, and 6 assists, but the numbers don't capture the magnitude of her poise. Every board she ripped down was through traffic. Every kick-out pass came after she drew double teams. In the final minutes, when Indiana needed stability most, Boston delivered with the kind of composure that defines superstars. Odyssey Sims added her own spark. Signed mid-season, she looked like she'd been part of the Fever's DNA for years. Her 16 points and 8 assists weren't just stats, they were lifelines. She drove directly at defenders, fearlessly attacking the paint, and her ability to create shots in broken possessions kept Indiana breathing when the game threatened to suffocate them. Sims was the steady veteran presence a young roster needed in the crucible of elimination basketball. Natasha Howard and Brianna Turner played their roles like warriors, extending possessions, diving on the floor, contesting shots. Howard's hustle added rebounds Indiana shouldn't have had, while Turner's rotations clogged driving lanes that could have buried them. Aerial Powers brought the intangible energy, diving for loose balls, rallying teammates with her relentless motor. For a roster patched together by necessity, every piece mattered. But as the clock wound down, the story shifted toward redemption. Lexie Hull had struggled all night, shots refusing to fall, rhythm escaping her. The frustration was obvious, yet she never stopped defending, never stopped hustling. Then, with under 30 seconds left, she finally hit a three-pointer to swing momentum back toward Indiana. The building gasped, the bench roared, and Hull exhaled as if the weight of the night had lifted in a single release. Still, the game hung in the balance. Atlanta set up for a final possession, needing one clean inbound to stay alive. That's when Hull, reading the play like she'd seen it in slow motion, pounced. She jumped the passing lane, snagged the ball, and sealed the Fever's ticket to the semifinals. In one heartbeat, she transformed from struggling shooter to hero. That steal wasn't just a defensive play, it was the symbol of Indiana's entire season. Even when nothing seemed to go right, they refused to quit, and when it mattered most, they delivered. The celebration that followed was raw, emotional, and cathartic. 10 years of waiting ended in an instant. Kelsey Mitchell embraced her teammates, unable to hide her tears. Boston sat momentarily stunned before clutching her teammates in joy. Hull, the night's unlikely hero, held the game ball high like it was treasure. Veterans Sims and Turner soaked in validation that their fight and presence mattered in building something special. Even Caitlin Clark, sidelined with injury, was part of the victory, shouting from the bench all game and posting in all caps afterward. Fever show. The unity of this group extended beyond the floor. Head coach Stephanie White gathered her team afterward and told them exactly what the world could now see. It didn't matter the circumstances, the score, or the odds. They always put their best foot forward. And someone always stepped up. This time it was Hull, but it could be anyone on any night. That's the identity that has carried them through injuries and adversity. Now the road only gets tougher. Awaiting them are the Las Vegas Aces, the reigning champions loaded with MVP talent in Aja Wilson, Chelsea Gray, and Jackie Young. Becky Hammon wasted no time warning that Indiana hasn't seen the real Aces yet, a shot across the bow that raised the stakes instantly. Vegas knows the Fever embarrassed them earlier in the season, and they'll be hunting for revenge. The challenge is enormous, surviving a 5-game series against a powerhouse built for this stage. But for Indiana, that's tomorrow's battle. Tonight is about finally breaking the curse. It's about proving that even a roster torn apart by injuries, written off by everyone outside their locker room, could still claw its way into history. This wasn't luck. This was heart, resilience, and a collective refusal to be defined by a decade of disappointment. Lexie Hull's steal is now more than a highlight. It's a turning point. Kelsey Mitchell's leadership is more than scoring. It's the heartbeat of a reborn franchise. Aaliyah Boston's dominance is more than stats. It's the foundation of a new era. And together, they've given Indiana Fever fans something they've waited 10 long years to feel again: belief.